A police dog bursts through the hospital's sliding doors, his fur streaked with dust and his breath ragged, carrying the limp form of a wounded little girl clamped gently in his jaws. Nurses freeze as alarms blare, the dog refusing to release her, eyes blazing with desperate urgency as if he alone understands the danger still closing in. His paws smear blood on the sterile floor, his body trembling with exhaustion, yet he stands like a shield against an unseen threat approaching fast. And as staff rush forward, one chilling question hangs in the air. What terrifying force drove this brave dog to fight his way here? In a quiet suburban neighborhood bordered by forests and rolling hills, 7-year-old Lily was known for her bright laugh and fearless curiosity, two traits that often carried her on small adventures through the backyard trails behind her home. Her constant companion was Rex, a seasoned police dog recently retired after years of service, a powerful German shepherd with a streak of silver along his muzzle and an uncanny attentiveness in his amber eyes. Lily's parents had adopted him through a special program, hoping his calm temperament and protective instincts would offer their daughter both comfort and companionship. And from the first day he stepped into their home, Rex seemed to adopt Lily with a devotion deeper than instinct. They spent mornings wandering beneath tall pines where sunlight filtered through like scattered gold, Lily collecting smooth stones while Rex trailed beside her with a patient, watchful gait. Afternoons were filled with simple joys, Lily brushing Rex's thick coat while humming softly, Rex resting his head against her knees, as if anchoring himself to the small, fragile human he now guarded with unwavering purpose. Their bond grew with each passing day, stitched together by trust, routine, and the unspoken understanding that they needed each other in ways no one else fully grasped. Yet as peaceful as their life seemed, small unsettling details began creeping into the edges of their days, slipping in quietly at first like drifting shadows. Rex, normally composed and steady, started showing moments of heightened alertness, lifting his head abruptly at night as if hearing something far beyond human perception, pacing the hallway in silence, muscles tense beneath his fur. Lily's parents dismissed it as remnants of his working life, but Rex's unease only deepened, especially during their walks in the woods. He would pause, ears pricked, standing rigid as though sensing a presence just out of sight, guiding Lily closer to him with gentle nudges whenever she wandered too far from the trail. Birds would go silent without warning, the air thick with an inexplicable stillness that made even Lily's adventurous spirit falter. On one afternoon, the wind carried the faint smell of something metallic and wrong, and Rex pressed himself against Lily's side, scanning the trees with a fierce protectiveness that did not belong to a peaceful retirement. His instincts, honed through years of service, were awakening to something unseen, something lurking at the edge of their world. Lily, innocent and blissfully unaware, continued to laugh and skip through the forest paths, trusting Rex to keep her safe, while Rex remained locked in a quiet vigilance, his loyalty evolving into a silent promise that he would face whatever threat was coming long before it ever touched the girl he had chosen to protect. The days that followed seemed to darken around the edges, as though the world itself were bracing for something Lily and her parents could not yet understand. But Rex sensed with agonizing clarity. Each morning he rose before dawn, standing guard at Lily's bedroom door with his ears angled forward and every muscle coiled in restless anticipation, his gaze fixed not on the family inside the house but on the silent woods beyond the backyard fence. When the sun finally crept over the horizon, Lily would awaken with her usual softness, unaware of the long hours Rex had spent pacing the hallways like a soldier awaiting orders that never came. Their once carefree walks through the forest trails grew steadily more tense, the wind carrying whispers of movement through the undergrowth that made Rex lower his head and widen his stance, his instincts warning him that the balance of their peaceful life had tilted. He began positioning himself between Lily and the tree line, guiding her subtly toward the center of the path, his protective behavior no longer gentle but urgent, as though every shift of the shadows hid a threat inching closer. The forest animals, once lively and abundant, seemed to vanish day by day, leaving behind an eerie stillness broken only by the occasional snap of a twig deep in the woods, a sound that made Rex's fur bristle and Lily instinctively move closer to him. At home, the unease followed them. At night, Rex would prowl from window to window, pausing at each one to stare into the darkness with a low rumbling growl vibrating through his chest, his tail stiff and his teeth bared at something only he could detect. Lily's parents tried to comfort him with soft words and reassuring gestures, But Rex remained anchored in a state of vigilance, unwilling to surrender to rest no matter how exhausted he became. And slowly, Lily began feeling the weight of the change too. She started waking up to the sound of Rex's claws tapping anxiously on the hardwood floor, his pacing a constant reminder that something outside was drawing nearer. One evening, during a late walk along the forest edge, Rex froze so suddenly that Lily almost stumbled over him. His body tensed, hackles rising one by one like a slow, moving wave, his nose twitching toward a spot where the trees grew unnaturally dense. A faint, metallic scent drifted through the air, so subtle Lily barely noticed it, but Rex's reaction was instant and fierce. He pushed Lily back with his body, forcing her behind him while he stared into the suffocating darkness with the blazing focus of a dog who had spent years tracking threats invisible to most. When Lily's father called for them from the yard, Rex didn't budge. Only after several tense seconds, when the silence in the forest broke with a rustle that traveled too quickly to be an animal, did he retreat slowly, never turning his back on the trees until they were safely inside the house. Over the following days, their ordinary routines fell away as Rex's behavior became impossible to ignore. He shadowed Lily at every step, during breakfast while she played, even when she simply moved from one room to another, his presence constant and unyielding. The more he guarded her, the more Lily sensed the seriousness behind his actions, a quiet dread growing in her chest even though she could not name its source. Storm clouds gathered one afternoon, darkening the sky prematurely as a cold wind swept through the neighborhood. Lily had been coloring on the living room floor when Rex suddenly lifted his head, ears snapping forward in alarm. His eyes locked onto the back door, and within seconds he was standing rigidly in front of Lily, pressing her against the wall with gentle insistence. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and then came the unmistakable thud of something striking the fence. Lily startled, and Rex emitted a deep, guttural sound, half warning, half threat, directed at whatever lingered just beyond the wooden boards. Her parents rushed in, but before they could react, another thud echoed across the yard, followed by the scraping of something moving along the fence line with deliberate, predatory slowness. The storm broke overhead with a violent crack of thunder as Rex bolted to the sliding door, barking with a ferocity Lily hadn't seen since the day he first arrived, his body slamming against the glass as though he were trying to break through it. When the lightning flashed, Lily caught a glimpse of something shifting between the trees, something low, powerful, and disturbingly silent, but the darkness swallowed it before she could understand what she had seen. Her father stepped toward the door to peer outside, but Rex lunged at him, blocking his path, forcing him back with an intensity that startled the entire family. It was the first moment they truly realized that Rex wasn't just nervous. He was fighting an unseen enemy that had already crossed into their world. That night, Rex refused to sleep at all. He stationed himself at Lily's bedside, his eyes fixed on the hallway, body rigid, breath slow and deliberate like a soldier listening for the softest shift of movement from a hidden foe. In the early hours of the morning, long before dawn, he suddenly lifted his head, ears pricking sharply. A faint scraping sound drifted from outside, the same deliberate, dragging noise they had heard at the fence but closer now, right up against the walls of the house. Rex rose swiftly, nudging Lily awake with urgent force, guiding her off the bed and toward her parents' room. His breathing quickened, the growl in his throat deepening as the sound traveled along the siding of the house, inching its way toward Lily's window with slow, horrifying precision. Lily barely had time to reach the doorway when a heavy impact struck the wall beside her window, hard enough to shake the picture frames on her shelves. She stumbled, but Rex caught her with his body, pushing her forward, forcing her into her parents' room as another blow landed, the walls trembling under the force. Her father sprang out of bed and reached for the door, but Rex shoved him back, signaling with every fiber of his training that they needed to stay together, away from the thin walls that now felt like paper shields. The scratching intensified, moving faster, circling the house with unnatural speed, while the wind outside carried the smell of damp earth and something metallic and menacing. Lily clung to her mother as Rex positioned himself in front of all three of them, blocking the doorway with a protective stance so powerful it felt like he could hold back the entire world if needed. Minutes stretched endlessly as the noise outside swelled and then abruptly stopped, plunging the room into suffocating silence. When dawn finally crept over the horizon, the family discovered deep gouges carved into the siding, long marks that looked deliberate rather than animalistic, as if made by something trying to get in. And though the morning light brought temporary relief, Rex remained rigid, his gaze fixed on the tree line beyond the yard, fully aware that whatever had come for Lily was not done yet. In the hours that followed, his behavior shifted from protective to desperate. He stayed glued to Lily's side, trembling slightly whenever she moved out of his direct reach, panting as though fighting an unseen countdown. And just when the tension seemed unbearable, just when the family tried to convince themselves the danger had passed, the forest fell unnervingly silent again, the air stilling in that same ominous way as before, signaling to Rex, with chilling certainty, that the moment he had been bracing for was finally here. The danger struck just as the sun slipped behind the trees, plunging the neighborhood into a dim, uneasy twilight that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Rex had been pacing since noon, unable to sit still, his instincts screaming with an intensity that bordered on panic as he shadowed Lily's every movement, nudging her away from windows, guiding her toward the center of the house with a trembling urgency he could no longer hide. Her parents had finally begun to understand that something real, something dangerous, was stalking them. But they still couldn't grasp the extent of the threat until the moment the air split with a sharp, guttural roar from the forest, a sound so violent and unnatural it made birds explode from the treetops and sent a shock of terror coursing through Lily's small body. Rex lunged toward her, pushing her backward mere seconds before the creature burst from the tree line, a massive, feral animal with matted fur, sunken eyes, and movements that felt wrong, twisted, as if it had clawed its way out of something far darker than the forest. It hurled itself at the fence, shattering a section with terrifying force, its breath steaming in ragged bursts as it fixed its gaze on Lily, drawn to her with a chilling, predatory focus that made Rex snarl with a fury so deep it seemed to ignite the ground beneath him. The family ran toward the house, but Lily tripped on the overturned garden hose, falling hard onto the grass, her cry slicing through the chaos as the beast barreled straight for her. Rex didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward like a missile of muscle and instinct, slamming into the creature with bone-cracking force, the impact knocking both animals into the dirt as Rex clawed, bit, and fought with a ferocity born from pure devotion. The creature snapped back with jagged teeth, sinking them into Rex's shoulder, tearing into his fur as he twisted violently to shove Lily away with his hind legs, urging her to crawl toward her screaming parents while he absorbed every brutal attack. Blood darkened his coat, but Rex refused to fall, rising again and again, driven by the singular purpose of keeping Lily alive. The beast lunged for her once more, but Rex threw himself into its path, taking the full brunt of the charge as he locked his jaws around its throat, muscles quivering, refusing to release even as the creature thrashed with monstrous strength. Lily's father managed to reach her, dragging her toward the house, but Lily twisted in his arms, sobbing as she watched Rex and the beast tumble across the yard in a whirlwind of fur, claws, and blood. A violent crash shook the garden shed as both bodies slammed into it, the door splitting open, scattering tools across the ground, and for a moment there was only silence, an awful, breathless shock that froze everyone in place. Then the beast emerged, staggering, wounded but still alive, limping toward Lily with a final desperate snarl, and Rex, broken and bleeding, pulled himself from the debris with trembling legs, his chest rising and falling in sharp, uneven bursts. He pushed forward with the last of his strength, dragging himself between Lily and the creature, standing as tall as his battered body would allow, his stance a declaration that he would die before letting harm reach the child he had dedicated his life to. The creature lunged, but Rex surged upward in one last explosive burst of power, knocking it off its feet and driving it back toward the shed. A glint of metal caught the fading light, a fallen pry bar, and Rex forced the creature downward with all his remaining weight until its own momentum impaled it cleanly, its final cry dissolving into a shuddering stillness. Rex collapsed beside it, his body trembling, breath shallow, eyes struggling to stay open as Lily broke free from her father's grasp and ran to him, her small hands shaking as she knelt beside her dying protector. Sirens wailed in the distance, approaching fast, lights flashing against the darkening sky as neighbors emerged in stunned silence, but all Lily could see was Rex's fading gaze, still fixed on her with unwavering devotion even as his strength slipped away. And as she clutched his blood-matted fur, refusing to let go, the world seemed to hold its breath once more, because no one yet understood that Rex was far from finished, and the most unbelievable moment was still to come. In the chaotic minutes that followed the creature's fall, the world around Lily dissolved into a blur of sirens, shouting voices, and trembling hands reaching to pull her away from Rex's blood-soaked body. But she clung to him with a desperation so raw that even the paramedics hesitated, recognizing the unbreakable bond between a wounded child and the dying dog who had given everything to protect her. Rain began to fall, soft at first and then steadily heavier, washing streaks of mud and blood into the grass as first responders rushed across the yard, their boots splashing through the wreckage of the battle that had nearly stolen Lily's life. Rex lay motionless except for the faint rise and fall of his chest, each shallow breath a reminder of the brutal injuries he had endured. Yet his eyes remained fixed on Lily with a fragile determination, as though he was fighting against darkness itself to reassure her that he was still there. Paramedics gently lifted Lily into an ambulance, checking her for injuries, but she refused to let go of Rex's collar, her small fingers gripping it with unwavering resolve until the police officer who had arrived on scene, a man who recognized Rex from his years of service, stepped forward with tears gathering in his eyes. He knelt beside the wounded dog, speaking softly about how Rex had once saved officers, how he had been known for fearlessness and loyalty beyond measure, and then he made the decision that changed everything. Rex would be transported with Lily, treated as both a victim and a hero. With great care, several responders lifted Rex onto a stretcher, securing him beside the crying child who kept one hand resting on his chest as if her touch alone could anchor him to life. The ambulance raced through the storm-drenched streets, lights flashing wildly across wet asphalt while Rex's breathing wavered between painful gasps and long, frightening pauses, and Lily whispered silent promises to him in her mind, vowing that she would not let him slip away no matter how dark the night became. Inside the hospital, chaos erupted around them. Doctors and nurses surged through the halls as the injured pair were swept into emergency care, and the police dog's presence stunned every member of the medical staff who witnessed his battered body and the girl he had refused to leave behind. Rex was rushed into surgery while Lily was treated for shock, bruises, and exhaustion, her parents hovering beside her with pale faces and trembling hands, torn between gratitude that their daughter was alive and terror that Rex might not survive. Hours crawled by with aching slowness, and even as the storm outside began to break, the fear inside the hospital only grew. Police investigators examined the strange creature's remains. Veterinarians were called in for consultation, and specialists tried to understand how such a threat had gone unnoticed in their quiet town. But none of those questions mattered to Lily, who sat silently in her hospital bed gripping Rex's collar against her chest as though it were a lifeline. When the surgeon finally emerged from the operating room, he wore an expression neither hopeful nor grim but heavy, like someone carrying news too complex to deliver in simple words. Rex had sustained massive injuries. Deep bite wounds, internal trauma, a broken rib, but against all expectations, his heart was remarkably strong, refusing to fail even under the immense strain. He was alive, the surgeon said, but the next 24 hours would decide everything. Lily nodded, tears streaking her cheeks, and begged to see him. They allowed her entry once he was stabilized, and she stepped into a dim recovery room where Rex lay wrapped in bandages, tubes and wires trailing from his body, his breathing thin but steady. She placed her hand on his paw, feeling the faint warmth beneath his fur, and for the first time since the attack, she allowed herself to hope. Hours became days, and though Rex's recovery was slow, it was steady. Police officers visited him, leaving commendations, treats, and handwritten notes thanking him for his heroism. Veterinarians collaborated with medical staff, creating a specialized treatment plan to address wounds no ordinary animal could be expected to survive. Through every moment, Lily remained his constant companion, reading next to him, humming softly, sleeping curled against the side of his hospital bed while nurses gently adjusted blankets around both of them. Her presence seemed to anchor him, and with each passing day he grew stronger, lifting his head to look at her, then nuzzling her hand, then eventually standing with trembling legs supported by harnesses and the encouragement of staff who had come to adore him. As the news spread, the community rallied. Flowers arrived in waves. Letters poured in from strangers thanking Rex for saving a little girl he loved more fiercely than his own safety, and local organizations started a fund to cover his medical expenses and support his long road to healing. When Rex was finally discharged weeks later, the entire staff gathered to honor him, awarding him a special medal for bravery while Lily, now steadier, stronger, and filled with gratitude that eclipsed her previous fear, walked proudly beside him, her hand resting lightly on his back. Returning home was difficult at first. The yard still bore the scars of the attack, and the forest seemed unnervingly silent, as though permanently marked by the violence that had taken place. But Lily and Rex faced it together. With time, Rex reclaimed his strength, though a slight limp remained, a reminder of the battle he had survived. Lily's parents reinforced the yard, added stronger fences, and stayed close to their daughter, who walked with newfound caution, but also with a determination shaped by witnessing the purest act of loyalty she had ever known. As the months passed, the memory of the creature faded into whispered stories and warnings about unseen dangers, but the memory of Rex's heroism became something far more powerful, something almost sacred. Schools invited him as an honorary guest to teach children about courage, police officers visited him regularly, and neighbors treated him with reverence, recognizing that he had not only saved Lily, but restored their belief in the extraordinary bravery that animals are capable of. Through it all, Rex and Lily remained inseparable, their bond deepened by trauma, but strengthened by survival, an unspoken understanding passing between them every time their eyes met, a promise that they would protect each other always. On warm evenings they sat together on the back porch, watching the sun fade behind the tree line. The danger long past, but the lesson forever imprinted on their lives. And though Rex bore scars and Lily occasional nightmares, both found healing in the simple comfort of being together, knowing that love and loyalty, when given freely and fiercely, could rewrite even the darkest moments into stories of hope. In the end, the world remembered the dog who had walked into a hospital carrying a child he refused to lose. But to Lily, Rex was more than a hero. He was her guardian, her protector. The living proof that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to stand against it for someone you love. And each night, as she wrapped her arms around him before sleep, she whispered the truth she now carried in her heart forever, that the bravest souls are often the ones who walk beside us on four legs, ready to face every shadow so we can continue to walk in the light.